Welcome everyone. We'll start, maybe give another few seconds, and we're up to a few hundred here, so we'll start going. Just while we're waiting, I just, as always, I just want to put in the link to our anteprima, which is our preview of our catalog. Okay, you don't need to register. If you just follow that link, you will be able to see the new centers we have this year, some new things that are happening, more to come quite soon when we actually release the catalog at our convention. Okay, but if you're interested in taking some kids away for a summer trip next summer in July, please click on that link, and you can always call us at the office. Okay, I think you find a lot of interesting details in there, and some specials if you book early. Okay, in there. Other than that, shall we start? I think it's about time we started. Okay, so welcome everyone to our webinar. I'd like to introduce you to Dahlia. If you didn't join us on the webinar she did before, Dahlia is going to be taking this webinar because she planned it and it's on her topic. So we're going to be talking about using Peter Pan in the English classroom. With that, I'll just remind everyone that you will receive a certificate of participation and a webinar handout if you've been registered to enter. If you don't receive it, check your spam, but you can always email us at formazione@mlaworld.com and we'll send you that out. The webinar handout will contain all the information from that, okay, from the webinar here. So anything important that you see here, including links, including not only the links that you're going to see in the webinar, but a lot more, and a few worksheets that Dahlia has designed too that you can print off and use in class. I think you'll find it very useful. The certificate will be for 4 hours because we imagine that if you use all the details in the handout, including the links, it'll keep you busy for at least 4 hours, if not a lot more. Okay. With that, I'll hand over to Dahlia.
All right, good evening, everybody. So we're going to start looking at Peter Pan. And I think, as we said in the chat, like every one of us knows who Peter Pan is to a certain degree. We may have watched him in the Disney animation, like someone pointed out, or actually, it's not very common nowadays, but some of you may have read the novel by J.M. Barrie, seen him at the theatre, because that's where it originally came out as a play, or watched one of the many films. One of the most famous ones is Steven Spielberg's Hook. And there's also Finding Neverland, which is particularly about the author, with Johnny Depp and Kate Winslet. So no matter how he came into your lives, he has remained. I think that's it's the one thing we can all agree with. Him flying in the sky, fighting pirates, swimming with mermaids. It's one of those things that we always will remember. And above all, so his costume for Halloween or Carnival. It's always the green costume, the tights, the little hat with the feathers. So interestingly enough, actually, if you look in psychology, there's a syndrome known as the Peter Pan syndrome, which is for mainly men, but it's for people in general, who says for people who don't want to grow up. So it's been called the Peter Pan syndrome.
I think, what was it, Michael Jackson had his, he was a bit like that, and he even named his house after Neverland, didn't he?
Yeah. So it's for this reason, because of this familiarity, that it's really valuable to use in the English classroom. It's the fact that students can get to learn a story they know well, they explore it, and they don't have to worry about understanding the plot or remembering characters, because we all know them. They focus on vocabulary and how to express their opinions. And they also feel just a little bit at ease with themselves. They feel lighter during the class. So sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, sorry, I was just going to say that when I was learning Italian, it really helped me to watch films and TV series that I'd already watched in English.
Exactly.
Okay? Because of this, I sort of was already familiar with it. I didn't have to worry about the plot and missing parts of the story and things like that. So I think something like this that we're already comfortable with would really
Yeah.
help people. Okay.
It's so true. Yeah, it creates depth to the conversation. So I completely agree.
Yeah. As always, we have some objectives. So by the end of this session, including the handout, you should be able to introduce London to students using a work of fiction. So this a little bit about London as well. Be able to use different media. We are looking at the book, but we're also looking at some audio and a video to talk about the text and themes of Peter Pan, and we should be able to encourage students to write and speak in class with the use of these creative activities. I think a lot of the activities you're describing are sort of not just looking at the book, but also using the book as a launching pad to write and speak. Okay?
It's true. Right, so warm up. So when we're introducing Peter Pan, undoubtedly, this is something I will swear about. Teenagers will be, it's not the most popular book to introduce to students because at the age that they're at, it just will seem childish. So, and they're more eager to be adults. So Peter Pan, in this sense, actually, ironically enough, it's very topical because it's about wanting to stay a child. And it's, so the first thing to do is to reassure the students that there is a lot they can learn from stories they read as children now that they've grown up. So there's many stories such as Gulliver's Travels, Alice in Wonderland, stories that we all know, all right, but they can also be used, same idea. So a nice warm-up activity can be a simple discussion. You can ask your students what they remember of the story, ask them if they've worn a costume of Peter Pan, ask them if they can figure out what it is that made the story so popular worldwide. And lastly, but not least, ask them to write a list of what they think are the advantages and disadvantages of growing up. You may want to add each of them onto the board. And obviously this list will vary depending on the age of the students that you have. But it's always it always brings up some interesting points of views.
Yeah, I think the sort of brainstorming opinions is always a great way to introduce a topic.
Definitely. After warming them up and they've got an idea of what's happening, we've got all our different advantages, disadvantages, we can start to explore the book in depth. And this starts with the activity of to be a reporter. A nice way to introduce to your students is to invite them to act as if they were reporters. Ask them if they remember the names of the characters, the setting, and which are the basic elements that which they should know.
Sylvia notes in the chat that could be a good idea for a debate. Is it, it's better to grow up, it's better not to grow up. That could
Definitely.
be a great idea too. Yeah, depending on the levels, I think debates are really fun activities to get them well. Okay? Definitely.
It's a very good idea, actually, yeah. Sorry. The next time you may even want to ask your students to report this information prior to the introduction of the topic. This will save you a lot of time, but will also raise their curiosity. So if you say to them you're doing Peter Pan as homework, they can come back with character studies or opinions that they've written, what they think of each character, what they remember, and it can exercise a lot of their presentation skills and speaking skills as well.
Tell us in the chat if you remember the names of any characters. Obviously, we have Peter Pan, but can you recognize any of these other characters from the book or the films? Okay? So let us know in the chat if you know the names, because on the next page we're going to look at it. So Eleanor did mention Wendy, so yes. Okay. Anyway, I'll hand back to Dahlia to introduce the characters.
Yeah, I think that the first few ones are like the easy ones, then it gets more difficult. Peter Pan, obviously, is the main character in the novel. He never wants to grow up. He has the ability to fly wherever and whenever he wants to. He meets Wendy and her brothers when he flies into their window one night, and he teaches them how to fly and leads them to Neverland. He takes them on an adventure and saves them from pirates. So that's the first one. Then we have the antagonist, Captain Hook, and the leader of the pirates, and he lives in Neverland. They're the adults of the Neverland. So Hook hates Peter Pan. because he cut off his right hand and fed it to a crocodile. Hook attacks Peter when he first brings Wendy and her brothers to Neverland. Hook desperately wants to get revenge and attempts to poison Peter, but Tinkerbell gets poisoned instead. Eventually, Hook is killed. Sorry if for the spoiler. Yeah, I probably should have said that first. Spoiler alert. Hook is killed and fed to the crocodile. All right, then we have Wendy. Wendy's a girl who's approaching womanhood. When Peter appears, first thing she does is she sews his shadow back on, and that's how they end up meeting. He asks her to come to Neverland, so she mothers the Lost Boys and to tell them stories. At first, she enjoys the role, but then wants to return home. She eventually grows up and has her own children. So here we already have our first theme of mothering. And then we have Neverland, which is the setting of the magical faraway place where Peter Pan and the Lost Boys live. Pirates, mermaids, and Native Americans live there too. So,
okay, all of this details is in the handout, so you will be able to use this in a class if you're going to see if they remember, if they want to talk about the characters, things like this. Okay.
All right, so the author of the hour, here we have Sir J.M. Barrie. All right, I don't think many students actually have heard of this, of the author. It's not like the author of Alice in Wonderland, where his name is everywhere, but they definitely know about Peter Pan. So a good reading activity is to do a background information. It's very important. This background information will help them use WH questions. As always, so we have where was he from, where did he live, when was the first play written, when was the book published, the two different dates there, why did he write the story, and who inspired it. So to get all, there is an article actually in the New Yorker. It is a really good article because it gives you all the answers to these questions all in one piece. And I really recommend looking it up and reading it.
Yeah, I've put in a link for this article. You will have to register with New Yorker, but it's a free registration. Okay? I would have included it, but for copyright reasons, I can't include a whole article. But you can go to that link and you will be able to read it for free. Okay, and it is, yeah, as you said, it's a very interesting article. Okay, from a few years ago, if I remember.
The whole class can read this article and try to understand the vocabulary and descriptions used to understand who Mr. Barrie was and his peculiarities. So it delves quite into his personality. That's okay, I'm just speaking. So here you can see a character profile template. So after reading, they can actually complete this in their own words because it's chock full of so much information. It will help them understand him a lot.
I think this is like you'll see that this worksheet is not tied just to Barrie or any other character, so it could be used for any books you're using. So I think this is something that's attached to the handout, and I think you find this really useful that you could use for other books too. Okay?
Definitely.
So, you know, if you're not doing that, you could even do Shakespeare. You could do a character. You know, it could be Hamlet or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, biographies. It fits into so many different types of reading material. So the introduction to the book is very important. Introduction to the author. It helps the students to get to know the author, but it also prepares the students for the similarities and the links between the author's life and his text. As we all know, literature always, authors put in parts of themselves into the book. And the more you know about them, the links are always very interesting for students to work out.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so further discussion, we have our themes. So here I basically just wrote down one or two. We have growing up, the most obvious one. The character of Peter embodies the central theme of childhood. And growing up, Barrie uses his narrative to show the changes between childhood, freedom, and adult responsibility. The Peter, the boy who wouldn't grow up, chooses to remain a child forever. Ask your students how they perceive Peter Pan. Do we lose our imagination and freedom as we grow up? Is it a necessary part of life? and their opinions there will be many on this.
These again could be really well done as debates, okay, class discussions, small group discussions, things like that. I think any different interactions with I think it's one thing with debates I think could also be really good is ask people for their opinions first, and then often assign them to argue on the opposite side to what they believe. Okay, it's something that's really challenging. I know we do it in MLA centres in our classes, and the students aren't used to doing this sort of thing, but they actually, it's a really good critical exercise, I think.
And then we have motherhood. So motherhood in the book is represented by Mrs. Darling and Wendy. Peter distrusts mothers because he believes that his own mother betrayed him. However, Peter and the Lost Boys still desire a mother, which is why Peter flies Wendy to Neverland. Interestingly, also the pirates want a mother to look after them.
Pirates need mums too.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true. So what does this mean about the role of a woman? Is she primarily a mother? What do they think of these gender roles? Are they stereotypical? So I'm sure the students this should be a very interesting conversation. Not only just for the girls to give their opinions on what they think, but also to hear what the boys think. So you will get to have an idea of what generational divisions there are as well, of how the author was in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and how it is today, how it's changed.
Yeah, Sylvia mentions the role of mothers, women during the pandemic. So yeah, certainly. Okay, I think they're always changing and affects things like pandemics and whatever it is affect it. And I think it's always a good idea to look back to the Victorians and Edwardians to see how different their views were from ours, and also how they are similar.
Exactly, definitely. Right, so Peter Pan is set in London, and within the book we do meet quite a few places, and one of them is Kensington Gardens. So this is where Peter Pan resides today, because there is a statue of him, and where it all started. J.M. Barrie lived close to Kensington Gardens and published his first Peter Pan story in 1902, using Kensington Gardens for inspiration. And it starts with him giving his reason. It says, "I heard father and mother talking of what I was to be when I became a man. So I ran away to Kensington Gardens and lived a long time among the fairies." The statue was put up in secret at night because Barrie wanted children to think that it had magically appeared. So he didn't tell anybody. He didn't get any permission. He just popped it in the park, and it actually caused a lot of problems.
Oh, wow.
But it was eventually loved and accepted. And he wrote, "There is a surprise in store for the children who go to Kensington Gardens," in a newspaper to invite everybody to come and see it.
Right.
So this leads us to a listening activity that could be done around Kensington Gardens from a charity called Vocal Eyes for the Blind. Now, this is very interesting. It's very inclusive. So what they've done is they get well-known MPs, actors, or musicians even, to describe their first meeting with the statue. In this case, the statue, and a lot of other important monuments as well.
Yeah, it's a great idea that that while it's made for the blind, it's great for anything listening to compare your impressions.
Yeah. So an audio clip by Susan Greenfield, who describes the scenery and recounts the significance of the statue today. No, sorry, of the statue today. So
okay, we've got, sorry to interrupt, but we've got the audio here. We'll play a little bit. It does last for about 5 minutes, so we won't have time to listen to it all. But you will have the link, and also there's a worksheet with the text of it. So, if you have the link, which is actually on the worksheet as well, okay, and you can give that to your students and they can read along. Okay? So if we actually, let me just...
Thank you for downloading this audio podcast from the Vocalise London Beyond site project. For more information and our terms and conditions, please visit www.vocalize.co.uk/London Beyond Sight.
Susan Greenfield. I'm a neuroscientist and I'm based at Oxford University, but I'm also a member of the House of Lords, and this means I come to London about one day a week. And I was born in London, in Chiswick, and I remember long Sunday afternoons. This was in the 50s when everything was closed. So you went to the park because it was cheap, and because it was something you could do on a Sunday. We'd go for walks, Hyde Park and Kensington Gardens, and sometimes sail toy boats on the Long Water or the Serpentine. I have a very strong memory of my little boat getting marooned one day, drifting out into the centre where no one could get at it. I was inconsolable. My dad often recalled this incident as an example of how we change as we grow up regarding what's important to us. There are many species of waterfowl on the Long Water. Tall herons with their pointed orange beaks and long black feathers hanging down their backs like pigtails. White gulls are very common, mallards as well, and little black coots with their vivid white foreheads. A line of squat wooden posts runs across the water, and you often get a gull on each one, all facing the same way, like a line of statues on plinths.
Okay, you can get some sort of idea of what it's like. As you can hear, it's very well recorded and very clear, clearly spoken. So I think you've got a treat there if you want to use that as a listening. There is, even on that vocalize, there are a lot of other things described. So if you are doing London sites and the British sites, you know, you'll find, you quite possibly will find something there. So described for the blind, which is a great way of introducing a listening exercise.
Definitely. All right, Big Ben. So the Houses of Parliament and Elizabeth Tower, as it's called now, commonly called Big Ben, are among London's most iconic landmarks and must-see London attractions. As soon as you exit Westminster Station, all you have to do is look up and you will see staring right back down at you, Big Ben. Fun fact, it actually has 5 different names. So we've heard the first 2. It depends on whom you ask. You've got the East Tower, which is used by journalists because they don't want to make any mistakes. Then you have the Clock Tower, which is used by the royals. And there's also St. Stephen's Tower, which is used by tour guides and books.
Yep,
So
and these are obviously in addition to Big Ben and Elizabeth Tower. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Big Ben is what normal commoners use, what everybody calls it.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, Big Ben is the name of the bell inside.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it
so
is.
you can't really see Big Ben from outside, but you can hear it. Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay. Yes, you can. Yeah.
Named, I believe, after the curator or the person who took care of it, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's true.
okay.
Yeah. Big Ben is crucial to Peter Pan because it's from the clock face they start their trip, sprinkled with fairy dust to Neverland. Second star to the right and straight on till morning. This is a direction to Neverland from Disney's Peter Pan. Right, and this really ties in with time idioms. Time plays a crucial role in Peter Pan's story. London's a big capital of the financial world. We're growing up fast and being ready for the adult world is essential.
Let us know, before we reveal them, let us know in the chat if you know some idioms to do with time in English. There's a few in that image. Let us know if you know some other ones. We're going to reveal a few more soon, okay? Because it's amazing how many that have the word time or expressions about time. Okay?
So time is money, as is one of them expressions. In the English language, just like Josh said, there are lots of idioms. Do you have equivalent expressions in Italian?
Sylvia just put to kill time. Yeah, we certainly use that in English. Yeah, very common. Yeah. As you can see in the image on the bottom left there. Okay. So, you know, a way to sort of make time pass, I guess it is. Okay.
Yeah, so we have time flies, turn back the hands of time, to kill time. Here we go, Sylvia. Behind the times, time stood still, a race against time, in the nick of time, have a hell of a time. Like that one's for like when you're having fun. In
Yeah,
the
it's
nick of time.
strange. It's be careful, because hell in this case is not
Yeah.
necessarily a negative thing. It's I
Yeah.
think it's a variation of like have a good time.
Yeah.
So have a
Definitely.
hell of a time is like
Yeah.
amazingly good time.
Mhm. Yeah. Bide your time until. So it's about taking your time doing
Yeah,
something.
another one of these expressions where we have one word that remains bide that we don't really use in other language. Okay, to bide your time, sort of wait patiently until the opportunity occurs, I guess.
Yes, yeah, it's true. Yeah. And then we have in good time.
Yeah, we also Sylvia said to have a whale of a time. So a bit like have a hell of a time, have a whale of a time. Yep.
Yeah. Time will tell. So it's all about being patient and waiting to see what will happen. Stand the test of time. This is to do a lot with fashions trends. They usually say that. Will it stand the test of time?
Yep.
So if it will be reworn. The time is ripe.
Yep.
So the time is, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of those, I think you'll find a lot of websites. There's even, I think, videos about time idioms. Find, okay. A lot of them, idioms, obviously, time. It's a great topic to have idioms about, okay, whether it mentions that or whether in things like, for example, once in a blue moon, which is not doesn't have time, but it talks about the frequency of something. Okay.
True. Right, so we have a book trailer. So an activity that can be done once they have read the book, once you've explored all the options, done everything you need to do with the book, an activity that you could do after is a book trailer. Now, this is an engaging way to help students write and talk about what they are doing. Show some examples of a book trailer and a movie trailer and talk about the differences, how the book trailer needs to be concise, hints at the plot, and gets across to the audience what is exciting about the book, always without giving away too much.
Yeah, I think this could be a really good idea. I mean, we talked, when we talked with Luca, we talked about trailers and, looking at how they can be a summary or getting people interested. But it's great, the idea of having it for a book too. And I didn't even know that these existed on the web. Okay, I'm going to have a look at one now. Okay. Nice. I like it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay.
So to help create the trailers, they will use a worksheet that can guide them by asking a select of questions. In the worksheets, they will look at the tone, the characters, setting, and how they would describe them. Doing all the writing and preparation will make this exercise much easier. It's really important that they have everything ready. It's all about planning and preparing to have a really good trailer.
Yep.
This is an exercise where students will be able to show off their creativity and use all their tech-savvy skills. The kids these days are amazing on the computer and the internet. So I'm sure they will create some really interesting trailers.
Yeah, I think it's one thing we often forget is that if you hand it over them to give them the opportunity to make some thing that and even share it on YouTube, okay, you'd be surprised how easy they find it. Okay, impossible for me to.
No, me too. I'm with you.
Okay,
Yeah.
but to edit something like that, it's you know, so many people making TikTok videos and things like that. Okay. Obviously, we've got that worksheet there, as you can see on the right. Okay, so that's in the handout too. Okay. Again, not necessarily just tied to Peter Pan, could be used for other things too. Okay.
All right, so we have the use of social media. So in the task below, students will imagine a conversation via social media.
Sorry. Oh, 1 minute.
So we're going to use texting or tweeting, it depends, whichever. Write a list of characters on the board and also a list of events that have happened in the book. For example, we've got Wendy and her brothers flying for the first time with Peter, or the first meeting with Captain Hook, when Tinkerbell drinks the poisonous potion to save Peter. So events that can create conversation. From this list, students will choose 2 characters and write a conversation they might have through text messages or on Twitter. So it's the use of like informal language. You can also even use slang. There are no rules here. As long as they can use their imagination and have a conversation.
I could just imagine this for something like Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, yeah. Yes. Ask them to think about emojis they might use, what their Twitter names might be, and what hashtags they might use. For example, we've got I believe I can fly, hashtag Hookem, or hashtag let's clap for fairies, which comes from the NHS. So
yeah, I think incorporating these sort of social media, again, just as they can incorporate videos, make videos and stuff like that, I think you know, talking about conversations characters might have, it sort of makes it much more relatable. I think you know, one of the barriers I find that when young people are watching older films now, and when I'm talking about older films like even 15, 20 years ago, they're always saying, where are the phones?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
why is he waiting for her when she knows she's not coming? Can't she just text him?
It's so true.
Sort of ruins a lot of plots, really, I think.
It would have, definitely. There would have been no suspense then. It's much more difficult.
Yeah, but if you sort of incorporate these in, it makes it a bit more relatable while still getting them interested in the topics.
That's true.
Yeah, just winding up, I'll hand over to Dahlia to get the conclusion.
Yeah, so in conclusion, it's interesting to notice how much material we can draw from a story for children. The simplicity of the language and the structure of the story can be a plus to encourage the students to read a full book in English. It also helps when students know the story very well. They will not be put off by the complexity of the plot.
Yeah, I think this is very true about films too. You know, if you're going to watch a film, it's sometimes best not to watch a film that's new, okay, that they haven't seen. Even if it's a new film, it could be a new version of something, you know. And Disney, I guess, are always, you know, using old things like Peter Pan or whatever they are, the old stories, fairy tales. Okay, so it's always a great idea. And then, you know, a lot of these cartoons and things now, they often have, while they might be aimed at children, they often have things to entertain the adults and the teenagers as well. I mean, I can only think about things like Shrek and you know, these things where they're actually just as popular now with adults, because there's sort of different meanings, different levels in there. Right?
Definitely, it's true. We have the connection between a city and the story, which increases the charm of a place that goes beyond the usual visuals that students are exposed to, thus increasing their interest.
Yeah, I mean, things like so many people will be visiting London, you know, talking about a book, a film, a cartoon, a TV series set in London. It's always going to be interesting.
That's true. And we should never underestimate how powerful a surprise can be. If the students do not expect much from stories such as Peter Pan, they will feel rewarded once they have discovered how worthwhile it was to follow you and trust you.
Yeah, I think that's always true. Okay?
Yeah.
Please let us know, as always, in the chat if you have suggestions for future webinars. You've probably seen the calendar we have for the rest of the year, which there shouldn't be too many changes to that, but we are still looking at some new webinars for the next year, in January on. And so please let us know if you've got any ideas. Eleanor talks about festivities, so we have actually this year I've made a big effort to plan webinars around particular festivities coming up. In fact, next webinar is going to be just in time for Halloween, so we're going to have a very spooky webinar next week. Okay. So again, thank you for your attention, and particular big thanks to Dahlia, who prepared this webinar and hosted it today. She will be back in future for more webinars, I hope. And thanks a lot for preparing that and including the worksheets and the handout. Okay. As always, you'll receive a certificate of participation and a worksheet handout, which is will give you a lot more activities to do, some websites, some videos, all the links contained for the materials here. As I mentioned, next week on Thursday, the 27th of October, a few days before Halloween, we will have a webinar on using Halloween. And so come in and bring us your ideas if you want to dress up. Okay, you can tell us what costume you're wearing. I don't know if I'll be wearing a costume, but we'll see. Maybe. Okay.
You never know.
And I hope you join us then. Okay. Thanks again to Dahlia. Okay.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Goodbye, everyone. Okay.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.